Up until now, we've just been talking about working with outputs on the first DMX port. If we want to work with things in another port, or what we call in Congo another universe, we simply select the output, then say point, and the port or universe we want to use. Make that an output. Go ahead and select the channel we want it to be, and hit modify. It's going to ask us if we want to patch that channel to this output. Notice now it's saying 1.2, as in output 1 on port or universe 2, also known as 513. Go ahead and hit modify to confirm. And notice that this is now on our second port. So now that we've added some things into Patch, it's a good idea to save your show. To do this, hit Browser, scroll down into the files. Since this is our first time, we'll go to Save As, navigate that open, down to Play Archive, and hit Modify. We'll give it a name that we can easily remember, and hit Enter or Modify. It's a good idea when patching to save as often as possible. If we decide we don't want a channel, we can select the output, 1, output, and do 0, modify. It's going to ask us for confirmation. And now we have unpatched that output from that channel. There are a couple of other ways we can patch channels. If we hit Browser, go into Patching, arrow down to our Settings and Tools, and access the channel list, this gives us a spreadsheet-style list of our channels that we can very simply navigate from one channel to the next, select a particular dimmer, and enter it right on in. We can also unpatch here by doing the same thing we did in Patch and just saying 0, modify. We also have the option of going down into our output list by hitting Browser, arrowing down to Output List, selecting the universe we like using our arrow keys, hit Modify to bring that up, and do the same method we just used, but this time we're adding a channel with a number and modify, not adding a dimmer. And we can also say 0 and modify to unpatch. While we're in this view, we can also specify a proportion for the dimmer, or we can set a particular curve by arrowing to that field, hitting modify, and then arrowing up and down to select the particular one we want, and hitting modify again. Now let's talk about adding scrollers to our channels. To do this, we go back into Browser, come down to the Patch Wizard. We'll navigate over to the Patch Device tab using our right arrow key. Arrowing down, we'll have the option to select what type of device. In this case, we'll just leave it as scroller. Come down to number of devices. In my particular show, I have 15 scrollers, so I'm going to say 15, modify. Starting at desk channel 6, modify. And then we set up where they are addressed. My show starts at 71. They're all on DMX Universe 1, but I could specify something else here if I needed to. And they're all lined up right next to each other, which means I'm going to leave my output offset at 1. Underneath this, we have a very important checkbox. If I had left this checked, it would have replaced my channels 6 through 20 with this new scroller. What I want to do is actually add them to it so they're all controlled together. So I'm going to hit modify to take out that checkbox. Come down to scroller role. This allows me to select from some pre-made scrollers. We'll talk about making custom scrollers in a minute, but for right now, I'm just going to select a generic 32-frame scroller role. Down once more and hit modify on execute. It's going to tell me that 15 devices have been patched, and I can see channel list for the details. Go ahead and hit modify once more for OK, and then escape to clear out the wizard. If we take a look in our output editor now, we can see that outputs 71 through 85 have now been patched to channels 6 through 20. And if we take a look in our live table, we can see that 6 through 20 are now shaped slightly differently, and they have a row underneath them that's going to show us what scroll is active. When I patched my scrollers, I selected a generic 32-frame scroll roll, but I have the option to make my own. To do this, hit Browser, Scroll down to Devices and open up that node, and then down at the bottom into Settings and Tools. The first option will be scroller roles. Hit Modify. To add a new one, simply select the number you want, in this case 10, and hit Insert. We can label our scroller role by arrowing over to the text field and hit Modify. Type in a name, and hit Modify again. To actually edit the role, arrow back over to the number and hit Modify. This is going to give us our scroller item wizard. All we have to do here is enter in the number of frames we want, in this case 32, and hit Modify. Arrow down to Execute and hit Modify again. This is going to create a 32 scroll custom scroller role. I can navigate over to my text field. If I push and hold column and scroll the level wheel, I can make this a little bit bigger and give myself some room to work. When I hit Modify now, it's going to let me type in exactly what is in this position. In this case, it's my open frame. Hit Modify again when you're done, and arrow down, and we can start labeling exactly what gels are in our frames. Hit Modify when you're done, down again, and continue until you've labeled every frame in your role. So now that we've created our custom scroller role, we need to actually apply it to our fixtures. Hit Browser, arrow up to Patching, and go down to the device list and hit Modify. The device list is a spreadsheet of all of the devices we currently have patched in our show. Right now, we just have our scrollers. Notice that the scroller role has the 32 frame generic scroll that we added in when we first patched the channels. If we want to select this entire column, all we have to do is push the column button. We then can say Modify, and we have a drop-down list that includes the custom role we made in the editor a second ago. Hit Modify again to assign this, and now we have our scroller role patched in. Now, when you're working with scrollers, sometimes you have to go back in and calibrate them, whether they're off a little bit or they've aged a bit and stretched. To do this, let's select our channel, so in this case 6 channel, roll up the wheel to get some intensity, and now arrow over to the Calibration editor and hit Modify. This shows us all of our scrolls, their adjusted position, and the scroller roll position. The adjusted position is our calibrated position. As we navigate through these individual rolls, notice that our scroller changes to match. We can then use the level wheel, either up or down, to move the scroll back and forth until we get it perfectly centered in the frame. As soon as we're done with that, just hit Escape and go back to the list.